I guess, do I have a second?
Giles, second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All, all opposed? Any opposed? All right, so I think
Laura,
we've
Laura,
got,
can I just pause real quick to make sure that I'm recording this? I think I am, but with
oh,
my screen sharing, I can't tell for sure. Yes, okay, let me.
it says
Yeah.
record. Oh, great. So, yeah, we just have a roll call here. Just want to make sure you have time to take notes.
Got it.
All right, and are there any public comments tonight? Like that anybody submitted? I actually don't really know how the public comments work because they haven't often come up here before. We had one person attend in person, I think, at one point. Okay, but I think there are no public comments. And the next item is approval of the minutes.
I move approval.
Second.
Do I have? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're zipping along. All right, so we're on to our first agenda item. How are you doing, Troy? Are you able to keep up with the notes?
I am. I think I'm doing okay.
Oh, you're doing great. You're doing great. So first agenda is the use of force training for police commission members.
Yes, so I'll just talk about this for a few minutes. One of my goals is to show our use of force complaints and our overall, or use of force, I should say, and our complaints, citizen complaints to public safety. I really thought it was important to show more transparency, to show that we do things right the majority of the time, and that when we don't, we hold our staff accountable, whether that's discipline or we look at training needs or equipment needs. So a couple months ago, I brought this to the Public Safety Committee and asked if they were interested in looking at a summary quarterly of our complaints and our use of force incidents, just so we have another set of eyes, a civilian kind of oversight. They can ask questions, and again, just more of a transparency type of thing as everything that's been going on in society. I think it was really important to show that as a department, we do things really right. And, you know, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished and our robust review system. But again, I think that transparency is what the public is really looking for. So when I brought this in front of the Public Safety Committee, they had a lot of questions, good questions, but it really made me think that there's probably a lack of knowledge maybe of use of force in law enforcement. So I've talked to public safety members. They're in favor of this. We're going to conduct a couple training sessions on use of force. We'll talk about our policy. We'll talk about what's allowed by law. The first couple sessions will be by Zoom, and then we're hoping once COVID's more under control that we can do some in-person sessions and actually put those who are interested, public safety members right now, but also offering this to members of the Police Commission and hopefully City Council too, of doing some in-person scenario-based training, just so you have more knowledge of use of force incidents and why we use force when we do, how quickly things change. I just read an article 2 days ago that said that a NFL quarterback has 3 seconds to make a decision on where to pass the ball. A baseball hitter has 1.5 seconds to decide if they're going to swing at a pitch. And a lot of use of force incidents in law enforcement, it's really milliseconds that an officer has to make a decision on what kind of force they're going to be using, whether it's deadly force, whether it's transition to a taser, anything like that. So I think it's really important to provide more training, more education, and I want to start with the Public Safety Committee, but I also wanted to offer that to the Police Commission members too, to see if anybody was interested in attending that. And again, it'd be Zoom. I'd spaced out probably 2 or 3 sessions so we don't have a quorum. But again, I wanted to offer that to see if that was of any interest to the Police Commission members. And if so, I can put you on a list. And when we start planning that, I will send out an email and provide the dates and the Zoom link, and we'll go from there. So that's kind of what I wanted to provide. I don't know if there's any questions, any concerns. If the Police Commission members have any questions about bringing this information in front of the Public Safety Committee, But again, that's a goal for transparency for our department to let everybody know that we are doing things right. And we'd publish that information on our website probably every 6 months, just to put it out there for the public to see. Again, our use of force instance and any complaints that we receive.
So is that use of force data the same types of data that's in the annual report? Or is there additional data that the Public Safety Committee will review?
It would actually be broken down by incident. So it'd be a summary of each incident, why the officers were called there, what kind of force they used. The one we put in the annual report is just kind of a overall
Just summary
summary.
tables.
But this would be broken down by instance, why force was used, whether we found it within policy, whether it was reviewed by our critical incident review board. We're not going to disclose officer information, but it'd be enough information that the public can see why we used the force for a given situation. So any questions on that? Any thoughts on offering the police commission members the training? Would there be any interest, or would the members just defer to the public safety as the group going through that training?
I think there's a lot of questions there to unpack. I think I heard about 3 of them. So one is about the training, whether or not our thoughts about the training, kind of thoughts about transparency, and then also thoughts about the Public Safety Committee reviewing the use of force incidents.
Yeah, sorry, I threw a lot at everybody.
All right, good.
I do have a clarification question. Did you say that you would offer the kind of training or informational sessions to the commission members here, just about when use of force is used and about the department policies?
Yeah, if that was of any interest. I didn't know if commission members were interested in that. I definitely want to get all the public safety committee members through it because they're going to be reviewing those. But at the same time, I thought, well, this might be a good opportunity for police commission members and city council to go through it, especially those who haven't gone through our Citizens Academy, especially with COVID. And I don't know when we'll get the Citizens Academy up and running again, but this would give an opportunity for commission members, council members to ask those questions, get a little bit more information on use of force. We see what's in the news. And I think a lot of people have questions, even the Kenosha incident, why did the officer shoot 7 times? And, there's a lot of science behind that, and that could be answered by some of our certified state of Wisconsin instructors who can provide that answer of why officers do what they do and the decisions they make based on the law and based on department policy.
I will say I went through this when I did the the Citizens Academy, and thought it was very informative to see. I mean, it's easy the whole evaluate 24 hours when you can sit and think about it, and there's not 12 people yelling at you and stuff like this. And it was impressive to see how stressful that is and how little time you have to make very important decisions. So I would recommend doing it because it just gives you a different point of view and adds more information about scenarios that we're not placed in.
Thanks, Toby.
Yeah.
So is there any interest from police commission members of attending if we host any of those sessions? I'm aiming for end of October, early November. Again, we're looking at probably 2 to 3 sessions depending on how much interest. My main thing is that we didn't establish a quorum. So I'd kind of spread that out amongst the 3 days. So a lot of questions, a lot of discussions can occur. And we wouldn't run into the issue of any type of quorum for a committee.
I would be interested.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep.
I had a couple questions just about just general process. So if the Public Safety Commission, how do they review this and then what happens next?
Yeah,
And I think transparency is a great goal, and more transparency is, I think, a good goal going forward.
Great question, Laura. As far as I know, not many other departments are doing this. In fact, I've reached out to some of my colleagues, and they like the idea. But right now, I'm just proposing bringing it in front of the Public Safety Committee members, having them take a look, ask questions if they want to ask. If they're concerned about an incident, that I would provide more answers. If they requested, I could probably bring video, body-worn camera footage. there's a lot of questions I have about it too, but I think it's really important to start showing that we have kind of a civilian oversight group taking a look at our use of force and taking a look at our complaints and making sure that we're doing things right. Again, 99.9% of the time we do things right, but every once in a while we do screw up. And I want to make sure that the committee members see that we hold our staff accountable and that there's discipline or there's training, remedial training that we offer. So I think very few times they'll question use of force. They probably will when there is one that we find out of policy. And usually our out of policy ones are, we think the officer used a taser in a situation where maybe they could have used more verbal skills. So we put the officer through some remedial training. So we don't have like really out in left field bad use of force incidents. We just don't. We don't have that many, first off, in a given year. But those that we have that are out of policy are pretty minor, and it's usually the critical incident review board saying, again, the officer should have waited for backup, or more verbal skills, or they should have done this. So again, the group I'm hoping is just taking a look at those and asking those questions, tough questions of why did you find this out of policy, or I have questions about this incident that the critical incident review board found in policy. Just again, another set of eyes to make sure that we're showing people that we're doing things right.
Right. So part of that is like maybe not everything will pass. I mean, hypothetically, either the internal review or the public safety committee. And I just don't understand what that process looks like. And I do appreciate that there are a few use of force incidents. And I looked at the report recently and saw the reviews and how they were categorized and everything. I just wanted to know kind of what was the next step. I mean, it's because it sounds like it's your expectation is that the public safety committee would just sort of rubber stamp this oversight, and is that the case? Or
I wouldn't say rubber stamp. I want them to look at that and take a look at the details. I mean, we've provided a pretty good summary. I gave them some examples, and it's a pretty good summary of the incident, and we had some really good discussions on why an officer pulled their gun in a certain situation and pointed it at an individual. So I don't want it to be a rubber stamp. I want to actually have a really good conversation, and I think providing some of that training, that background, that use of force training, I think it'll be a more productive conversation by them saying, I went through this, and where does this fit in your policy that the CRB found that this was justified. So I'm not really looking for a rubber stamp. I'm looking for some really good discussions, and I would say that in the end they would give approval saying we've looked at these, we don't have any concerns, but I'm also hoping that they find some that they have some questions on that, and again that we have really good discussions. So I'm not really sure how to answer that, Laura, because I'm not really sure where this is going to go, other than right now I want to make sure that we have a civilian oversight and some transparency showing that we're doing things right and evolving.
Yeah, I would recommend really thinking about that process because I think transparency I know is good, and then but the optics, if the expectation is they approve anything, if you ask questions about that, and and it's not really clear what happens, that would maybe raise some questions, and and so it's just kind of good to just think through the process in a lot of detail, and that's why I was just trying to think through kind of some of that right now.
That's a great point, Laura. Does anybody have any suggestions too? I mean, I think that is the unknown. I don't know I think it's going to evolve. 6 months from now, it might look a lot different than it does currently or when we start this process. But if anybody has ideas on how they think this should move forward or the best way to do it, I'm really open.
I do think that the committee would need a toolkit with a checklist once they take the training to be able to evaluate each incident. Sorry, I have a ringing in my ear right now. To evaluate each incident and be able to say, yes, that adhered to this policy, or we have question about this. And then they would need to propose a recommendation. I'm envisioning it sort of like a financial audit, right? They're going to make a recommendation whether, this looked okay, or this doesn't, and we need your response by this date, give you like 4 weeks to respond to their concern about something.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that idea, because I think most of it's going to be that they may not have all the information to, make all the checks through the list. I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, that is. And I'm hoping that we provide them with enough information that they would be able to look at it and say, yeah, this is justified, it's not. But yeah, I think there could be some situations that they take a look at the summary, the synopsis, and say, we have more questions. Can you come back with either the body-worn camera footage, or can we discuss this further? So those are great ideas, because again, this is something that not many departments have done. I'm trying to show that transparency. I know Madison is looking at a civilian oversight committee, but I think there's some concerns with that from the police department, even from the citizens that I've spoken to, and I think this is a better option, again, to have that civilian oversight, but a group that has that background and the knowledge, if we can provide that training to them. But those are some great ideas, and I definitely wrote them down, and we'll try to come up with some type of checklist.
Who would do the training?
We actually have state of Wisconsin certified DAT instructors, and they would be our instructors that would conduct the training, talk about our policy, talk about the law, and then they would also conduct the in-person hands-on training, probably early 21, maybe mid 21, once COVID again is a little bit more under control.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Paul, I have you down as some interest. I know you're really busy, so I'll try to find a day that works for you. Anybody else that would be interested, I'll put you on the list.
I would do it again. I thought it was, again, very informative. But you should put me on the bottom of the list, because if you're like near that quorum thing, I would easily step away so we don't mess with other people having the exposure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dobie.
Yeah, and I also agree with what Laura and Terry were saying about, I think it's going to be easy for, yes, this seems like that was appropriate, but the ones of, if it's not, then what is the next step? You have 4 weeks, then you come back, and what if the committee says we disagree? What would be that next step? I think that has to be set out first, and I think that would be an important thing that they had mentioned. So
perfect. A lot of good points. Thank you for the feedback. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Terry, go ahead.
As Laura alluded to, I think you do need to consider that you probably will receive some sort of FOIA request at some point, so you do need to be prepared to respond to the process. I'm also interested, although that's really close to election time, so we have a lot of other activities leading up to that date. And I did take the training, the Citizen Academy. So again, I'll be low on the list, but
perfect.
Yeah, I really do like the idea of having an outside review panel. I think that's a nice best practice that could be piloted in Middleton. So congratulations on a really good idea.
Thank you. And thank you for all the great ideas everybody's passed on. I don't have anybody else. I don't have another department nearby that can say, how are you guys doing this? So these are some really good suggestions that I'll have to think through and see how we can make it a good process.
Yeah, I'd be interested as well. I have just my schedule's awful, so I don't know that I'd be able to make it at that time. And I was not able to do the Citizens Academy yet, so I do want to make it. So I will send me the invite and I'll make it if I can.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. Bear with me as I write some notes. Yeah,
I was reviewing the report. So the report was released for 2019, and I was curious about some things. And I'm sure many more Middleton residents are reading the report these days. And I was thinking about transparency and ways to increase that in the report or beyond the report. So this is, I think, a really welcome step.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I'm in discussions with, again, a lot of my colleagues in Dane County. We're currently looking at the United Way use of force report from 2016. We're coming up with some new ideas. And one of the things that keeps coming up is transparency, and especially use of force incidents and claims. And I want to make sure that we are doing that. We're following those guidelines and suggestions, and also putting that information out on our website, which we're revamping. Hopefully in 2021, we'll have a new website. Yes, ours is very outdated. But that's one of my goals, is make sure that we are providing that information. We have nothing to hide. Again, if we mess up, we hold our staff accountable. whether it's discipline or remedial training, whatever it is. And I want to make sure the public knows that there's nothing to hide. We'll share whatever information and data we have.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I know in an earlier meeting, you also mentioned referrals to other agencies, and you've been getting, a lot of questions about a lot of things that I can't remember right now. And as you get those questions, and if you think of things that should be part of the annual report or whatnot, I just would applaud any effort. But I know that data collection and reporting takes effort. But if you're getting all the questions anyway, and I think it can go a long way toward building trust with some members of the community.
I agree.
It certainly makes me feel better to see the numbers, because I like numbers, and just to understand the process, especially when best practices are followed.
I agree. Thanks, Laura.
All right. Is there anything else on this topic? All right, so I think we just need a motion to move into closed session.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And to go into open session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
We're back recording, and I've also admitted somebody from the waiting room back into the meeting.
Okay.
And help me out, Paul, did you make that motion to go into? And who seconded that one? Toby?
No, it was great.
Perfect. All right. See if I can share my screen again. So if I recall correctly, I think we have to have a motion and open session for recommendations for the lieutenant, the positions.
I move approval of the recommendations.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, and so our last item is the department update on current crime trends.
I've tried to keep everybody updated on everything that's going on, especially with all the shots fired calls that we've been having in the city in August. Two of them, we have been able to connect to domestic incidents, which is pretty odd for us. We don't really have shots fired when it comes to domestic disturbances. But 2020 has been a very interesting year, as we're all aware of, and it's not shocking that there's a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety. Domestics are up, and two of the incidents were related to domestic disturbances. One on Northbrook, it stemmed from a domestic disturbance between a husband and wife. The husband ended up shooting, I think, about 13 rounds at his wife as she was driving away in her car. We're very fortunate that she was not hit, and we only found one bullet ended up in a neighbor's window. It was a double pane window, so it got stuck in between the two pieces of glass. Again, very fortunate. Our officers were nearby when the shots were fired, so we actually saw the suspect leaving the residence, and the officers made contact with him. Couldn't prove that night that he was involved or the shooter. He claimed he was a victim, but he was on probation, and we took him in on a probation hold. And based on our investigation, based on Ring video evidence and some other evidence we collected, we were able to determine that he was the one who fired the rounds at his wife. And we just referred charges to the district attorney's office about a week ago for recklessly endangering safety. So we feel very confident in that case. It's a strong case. And again, very fortunate that there were no injuries to bystanders or to his wife based on that incident. The other kind of concerning one was on Highland Way. This stemmed from a party on Highland Terrace. From our investigation, we believe that there was some type of disturbance in this residence on Highland Terrace. One that we're pretty familiar with is we've had a number of calls there since the beginning of the year. And then we think that disturbance ended up on Highland Way between 2 males and a female. And then during this disturbance, one of the males pulled a handgun out of his waist area and fired about, I could be getting the two mixed up on Northbrook and Highlands. One was 13 rounds, one was 11. I want to say this one was 11 rounds. He fired it up in the air, and then he fled in a vehicle. We believe we know who's all involved. This is an ongoing investigation. We have not made any arrests in regards to the disturbance, but a number of the individuals involved in this disturbance were on probation, and some of them were taken into custody on that. We're currently working with the management company to remove the tenant who we've had a number of issues with on Highland Terrace. Again, pretty odd to have 2 shootings related to domestic disturbances. Our staff did a phenomenal job, again, close by on the Northbrook one, that they were able to see the suspect leave and were able to make contact with him, and that really helped solve that case. And then we had 3 other shots fired calls in kind of the same time frame. One was a report of multiple shots being fired near the water tower on Highland Way. We were never able to find any evidence. There's some witnesses who think that it was fireworks. One of our officers who lives in North Lake actually thought it was actually handgun rounds being fired, but we never found any evidence. But we believe, based on the officers hearing the shots, that we believe that it was actually truly shots fired. And we don't know if it's related to the Highland Way address, but again, that was one of the 5 calls for shots being fired. Around that same time period, we took a report of damage to property at a newly constructed home on Red Tail Pass. This home had 3 bullet holes in it. When we canvassed the neighborhood, it sounded like there was a disturbance at the beginning of the month. A neighbor was out, I think, taking care of some chickens or some livestock that he had nearby, and heard some type of argument on Highway Q. After a few minutes of some arguing, he then heard gunshots, and we believe the rounds were related to that. And again, 3 of the rounds went into this vacant home. Luckily, nobody was there. It was newly constructed, but a realtor found the rounds a few days later. And then the last one was on the same night of the Highland Way call, as our officers were in the area of Middleton Hills, and they heard a couple shots being fired, and they thought it was from the area of the Beltline. We were never able to find any casings, but a Dane County deputy was nearby when we got that call and saw a vehicle leaving our city at a high rate of speed on Highway 14, which was later, we believe, related to the burglary and shots fired in Cross Plains. And we believe that our shots fired call that night could have been related to that vehicle and that stolen vehicle. We're definitely seeing an uptick of the stolen vehicles in our city and some of the crimes that are being committed: theft from autos, theft of autos, burglaries. And again, we're trying to get the message out that please lock up your stuff, lock up your vehicles, and making sure that we reduce that opportunities, because reduce the opportunity for crime, because a lot of these are not being forced. They're not forced entries to vehicles or to houses. It is finding the opportunity of a car door that's unlocked and then using the garage door opener to get into a house. Overall, our calls for service are, I think, back to normal pre-COVID activities, or to those levels. Our call activity is definitely up. Domestics are up. Just today, we had a heroin overdose death. Mental health calls are definitely up. The citizens, the public in general, are, again, very anxious. COVID has really locked down a lot of people. Unemployment. I'm really worried about the winter as cold weather sets in and people are locked in their homes more, what COVID's going to do and our call activity. But we're definitely seeing an uptick in calls. And again, I think we're at or above our normal call activity prior to COVID-19. So that's just a quick wrap-up summary of some of the calls we've been dealing with. Any questions? Any other calls that people have heard that they have questions on?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and I'm speaking for myself here, of course, but please keep your chin up, and please tell your team to keep their chins up. I'm sure I speak for everybody. We really appreciate all the hard work you do under very difficult circumstances. So please tell them to keep their chins up.
Thank you, Paul.
I also want to echo Paul's comments and say the nature of your job is one in which you often don't hear a lot of feedback from the community unless it's something didn't go right. And so even when everything is smooth and things are going well, you're not going to hear a lot of praise. But I hope you know that it is appreciated in the community.
Thank you, Terry.
Absolutely agree with both of them. I very much appreciate what you and your team are doing for our community. Thank you.
Thanks, we appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for that update. And yeah, I agree. It's been pretty challenging to be a police officer, and I appreciate all the efforts taken to handle these issues very well, especially the mental health and domestic issues. Those are important.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it.
All right. So I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Does anybody have any, I guess, issues for future agenda items for next time?
When is the next meeting?
We don't really have a schedule, but it's the next personnel related issue, I think, that comes up.
Yeah, we don't have anything on the calendar. We can set a date, but in the past it's only when there's agenda items. But I'm open if we wanted to meet in the fall sometime or sometime sooner. I guess fall's right around the corner, but
Yeah.
Next week, right?
yes.
I'm anticipating some interesting activity in November. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you can prepare for that, Chief, but
We've already taken some steps, but especially on election day, we are making sure that all of our staff, nobody's able to take off. We want to make sure that we have adequate staffing because, yeah, we're concerned about that day too.
Okay. All right. Well, if it sounds like there's no personnel issues and maybe somebody on the committee, like maybe Terry or anyone else wants to, I don't know, just get an update on some things like before Christmas or something, then I'm sure we can arrange that.
the emails that you send out, Chief, work just fine as well.
Oh, okay.
I think
Yeah, I like those emails.
I appreciate the updates.
Good. I don't want to inundate everybody with too many emails. Like me, I'm sure you get a bunch of them, but I really thought with those instances are not normal for our community, and I really thought it was important that I share that information with all the different committees that I'm part of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. All right. I think that's it for tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
We do indeed. So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Everybody, take care.
Bye.
Thanks.